Opening rooms now. Louise, are you okay to bring up the slides, the first slide? Hello, welcome everybody. It's so lovely to see so many of you all here today. Thank you. As you are all joining the room, please introduce yourself to everybody in the chat box by putting your name, country you're joining from, and what you hope to get out of the session today. So while we're waiting for people to come through from the waiting room, just welcome, and please introduce yourself to everybody that we're sharing this moment with. Welcome, everybody. So just as we're waiting for people to join us, just around getting started, if you'd like to introduce yourself on the chat box to everybody, your name, where in the world you're joining from, and your expectations, and we will get started as we have a jam-packed 45 minutes ahead of us, and there is a lot to get through. Louise, if you care to go to the agenda slide, that'd be awesome. So if you haven't already, just pop your name and country you're joining from and your expectations from the session today. Today we have a lovely 45 minutes. You're going to hear a little bit about the NGFP and the 2023 Fellowship. This is the second session of the NGFP Q&A series. In this session, we'll be providing a little bit of background about the fellowship for those, in particular, for those who are new to the fellowship journey. And then we're going to hear from our judges about their experiences as a judge, and more specifically, what advice they can share to support your application. And then finally, giving you the opportunity to ask a question to our judges. So this is what we've got for the next 45 minutes. So let's get going. Over to you, Katie.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm the practice manager at the NGFP practice. Next slide, please, Louise. Great. So before we dive in to hear from our judges, I just want to talk a little bit about the next generation foresight practitioners and where we came from and who we are. So we are an initiative that was launched by SWAF, which is the School of International Futures, in 2018. And this was done to establish and connect people from all around the world who are using futures and foresight methods to create positive impact within their community. And by doing that, create a better, fairer world today based on a more positive view of the future. Over the past 5 years, we've grown massively and are now part of a global network that has almost 600 members. And some examples from our 2022 cohort, just so you can get a sense of our fellows and the kind of different things they're doing. One fellow is based in India, and their project is around challenging the normative understanding of time being linear, so looking at our relationship to time. We have a storytelling project by a fellow from Nepal, which is exploring our relationship to how nature might influence the kind of futures that we are moving towards. And also a future scenario game targeted at climate action groups working across Canada. So super varied, super diverse, but all with a sense of, I'm looking at the future I want to live in. How do I make change today at the core of it? Next slide, please. So I'm sure most people are here today to learn more about the fellowship, and hopefully because you're already in the process of applying, which is great. And I saw someone said they hope to come away feeling more inspired to finish their application as a result. So yeah, fingers crossed. So the application is step one to becoming part of the network, essentially, and hearing more about our community. So to become part of the NGFP network, we ask people to apply to the fellowship, which we bring in around 25 to 30 new people each year as part of that year's cohort. And it's a year-long journey of funding to support your project. You have a one-to-one mentor, there's teaching, learning, career opportunities, and connecting with other people in this space as a way to develop your project or your idea. For anyone here that's been involved with us previously, the NGFP Fellowship was called the NGFP Awards, and there was a bit more of a focus on the monetary award. But this year we've rebranded and we're going with Fellowship just to really embody the holistic journey that our fellows are on. And there is a $10,000 prize fund that's available at the end of the year, the end of the first year of the fellowship, and we will be awarding that to the fellow that makes the most progress in their project, essentially. And anybody that's eligible for the network but aren't necessarily brought on to be a fellow, there is a wider network. Like I said, there's 600 people and 125 of those are fellows. So there is an NGFP network where there's more of a light touch involvement. So it's not like if you're not part of that 25, 30, you're not involved at all. There's other ways to be involved with us. And just a quick sort of important points, quick overview. Like I said, there's different amounts of funding available depending on if your project aligns with one of our global challenge areas. So you can see the box on the far right this year. If your project aligns with one of those, there's more funding available because there'll be more of a request and a need to work more closely with the School of International Futures and NGFP, essentially. We're also earmarking this year 2 spaces for people aged under 25, just to ensure that we're really championing youth practitioners and welcoming them into the sector. And also making sure that there's a bit of sort of fairness in that. You don't have to be working in any specific sector to apply at all. That's completely open. And hopefully today we'll be able to hear a little bit more about different things that you can look at that aren't sector specific and that can just help you to write a really good quality application. Thanks. I think, Sarah, back to you to intro the judges.
Hi, thank you so much, Katie. Apologies, I lost Zoom. It had a Zoom blackout on me, but I'm back. Yeah, so let's get into why we're here. So I am delighted to introduce members of the NGFP and Young Voices judging panel who are here today to share their experience and expertise about the process and answer your questions. Edward Wanyonyi, welcome, Edward, has been a judge with us since the NGFP inauguration in 2018. Edward is Strategic Communications and Systems Thinking Specialist, to name a few. Then we have Carla Pinagua, and Carla joined the panel in 2021 and is Chair of Future Studies. And then we have Michelle Shalbody, who is a Young Voices judge. The NGFP Young Voices Awards are led by our partners at Teach the Future, and the Young Voices Award aims to showcase the voices of our youth, which is the 12 to 17 years of age. Judges are an integral part of the NGFP Fellowship. Not only do they decide who joins, not only do they join forces to decide who to put through to the fellowship, but they also act and continue along our journey together and act as mentors, partners, and advocates for the NGFP practice. So if we can go to the next slide, we're going to talk about 3 questions in particular and find out from the judges, and then we'll have an opportunity to open the questions to the floor. So we're going to ask each of the judges to respond to the following questions, and we hope by hearing from the judges in this way, we can further support you in the application process by exploring what a successful application looks like, what are the common mistakes that are made that prevents an application being put forward, and any other hints and tips that they want to share with you from their collective experience from being a judge. So if I can go to Edward first. Edward, love for you to just introduce yourself, how you use foresight in your work, and then can you kindly tell us what makes a good application?
Thank you. I trust you all well from wherever you are. Joining in from Kenya, and I've been in this process from 2018, as was said, largely being a reader in strategic communications and the use of communications in terms of risk analysis and risk mapping. And, the foresight aspect helps me so much in terms of helping communities which are looking at peace building and, conflict management issues to see new narratives, around peace and how peace can be an enabling conversation. And so, to the question asked, what makes a good application? I feel that a good application must be able to demonstrate, first of all, what the applicant is doing at the moment, even without resources. what are they doing? What is their initiative? What is their level of effort? What is the change conversation in their communities? Most of the time we find applications which come and they are futuristic in the sense of, if only I get money, if only I get resource, I'll be able to do this. We're saying, what are you doing now? So the question of what is happening right now and how that is packaged and how it's presented as a potential project that can now be scaled up becomes interesting. The other thing which I find interesting is that the application should have a level of intersectionality, how it is dealing with other issues within the community. Problems or challenges do not just happen in isolation. So you might have a program or a project which is dealing with, for example, climate change, but how does it work with, for example, transport sector? How does it work with economy? How does it work with gender issues or women issues or children issues? So it has to be intersectoral. It has to have a level of connectivity with a wider. The other aspect is also to consider the community within your project, because you're not just working solo, you're bringing in other partners, you're bringing in other relationships. And the ability to weave these networks together, bring them together, helps your application to actually demonstrate that it's actually about water. And then finally, the issue to do with the ambition around if you win the fellowship. So how can you be realistic in your ambition? Most of the time you find applications are shooting very wide or very high. We are not discouraging, that, but we're saying just be realistic with your ambition. So you might be able to, win the award and get the 10,000, but what can 10,000 shilling dollars really do for you? So you have to be manage and scale your ambition. See what other partnerships will come in, and then demonstrate from that ambition, how much you're going to, grow with that. What are the non-financial issues that would come out of the application? And what are the financial issues that will come out of it? So in a nutshell, those are the areas I would feel that would actually demonstrate a good application. Thank you, and back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Edward. That's really, really helpful. I would invite Carla and Michelle to add to Edward's comments there around what makes a good application. But Carla, before you build on that, could you introduce yourself and let the audience know how Foresight and Futures is integrated into your work?
Yes, of course. Thank you. I'm an anthropologist and I run a graduate program in Foresight, and I'm also work as a consultant in future studies and collaborating in this award. It's a game changer for me, not only for the opportunity of learning, but for the chance to have a deep cultural exchange. So this is an inspiring opportunity. I encourage all the attendants to take advantage of this chance. And I'm totally agree with Edward. What do you think about this, Michelle?
So I'm sorry, did you want me to go ahead?
Yes, please. If you have
Okay.
anything you'd like to add to Edward, but also please introduce yourself to the group and how you utilize Foresight and Futures.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm looking over the chat and seeing people from all over the world, literally almost every corner of the world. It's so gratifying to see, and so to know that we're all here together for a little bit. So I actually, I have a consulting firm, McAbey and Associates, but I advise startups. So I'm advising really early stage companies, somebody who just has an idea, who wants to get that idea moving, who maybe needs help in even finding a co-founder. And I also teach innovation on the junior college level. So I just take ideas that my students have and we move them along to, possibly a business or a nonprofit. I deal with both sectors. And then I'm also involved with the World Affairs Council. So the World Affairs Council, really is a nonpartisan forum bringing people together. We have speakers from all over talking about all kinds of subjects, including the environment, etc. So, and Eddie, you did such a good job on on explaining exactly what people need to do. I don't need to really add too much on that, but I appreciate your knowledge in that area.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I would add that this is a really small window, your application, and the judges only see a small part of this. So this is your one opportunity to convey your passion around your project and your idea and how your project is going to impact your local or global communities. So, be really clear in terms of your project aims and how foresight and futures impact, and clear and good demonstrations of impact with your local or global communities, and how you're going to use futures and foresight methods in your work. But really, they just want to see the heart and soul and your passion leap out of the video and leap off of the summaries and the case studies that you provide. Yes, so moving to our second question, what are the common mistakes people make in their application? And I guess we reframe this as, what prevents a judge from putting an application forward? What is the obstacle that stops the application just making it over into the NGFP Fellowship? And I'd like to invite Carla first to respond, and then invite Michelle and Edward as well to contribute afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think one of the most common mistakes, maybe sounds incredible, but it happens in my experience. This happens very often, is that many projects have, in fact, excellent proposals with social impact, but a little relation to future studies. So I suggest you to take care of that part, of that aspect. Take your time, get informed, check specialized bibliography to prepare the proposal well, because sometimes it's really strong in the social impact aspect, but the proposal can be really weak in the future studies aspect. And this is, of course, an obstacle for us as judges. So even though maybe could be a great proposal, supposed to be strong in the future studies or in the foresight aspect. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Michelle, would you like to add to that?
Yes, Carla's right in saying, that relationship between looking at strategic foresight and looking, how are we going to build this into the future? And I use that even in startup companies. People who have startup companies, their future is like next week, right? So I kind of say, look, you've got to look a year or two ahead. And I have them do a new set of assumptions. They have their baseline assumptions, but then let's think about a whole new thing that could happen, something, even in the weather, whatever. And then what are your assumptions, and build on at least a year or two out. And it forces them to think out of their common, pathway of, okay, we're always thinking in this direction. You almost have to just have a stimulus there to get them out of that mode.
Thank you. Edward, would you like to have anything else to contribute?
Yes, I'd like to say that the challenge becomes when an applicant has made so much work and they're trying to string around various pieces of work into one whole, then sometimes making their connection becomes a challenge. So I would suggest that it becomes important to be realistic. Maybe we just use that SMART mnemonic. You're specific, you are measurable, you are accurate, you tend to be target centric, so that you don't have to have this whole world you're trying to constrain into one space, but you can take one line. Some of the very interesting proposals we've seen are just dealing with some things which you might actually discard and think they're not big enough, but the way they have been presented becomes so easy, because you're not looking at astronomical ideas here. We're not looking at ideas that are going to be at the UN Council and, the big what. No, we're looking at small ideas that are community-led, and the community conversations, they bring the flavor of the community, and they are able to be simple. They can be replicated across the world. So we have seen ideas like, for example, just last year, I saw an applicant who had a very persuasive idea about a market application, and how it can help farmers to reduce the cost and to know, what is the best time for their product to go into the market, so they have a level of targeting. So something simple that you easily dismiss, but the way it has been framed, it has been brought out forward, becomes easier for you to have an ambition of, now we say, if you add and support this application with some foresight skills, definitely it's going to make a difference in the world. And that's what you're looking for. So do not weigh yourself so much with this big ambition. Just start small, what you're looking in your community, what you're doing on a daily basis, and just work it out through the process. And I think you'll have a very interesting idea coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. And as we move to our third one, and I think we've already dipped into a couple of hints and tips, looking to Michelle, what other hints and tips would you like to share with those that are thinking about making an application?
Right. So I totally agree with Eddie about starting small, and I'm going to talk most about before you even write out an application. I mean, you need to think about your problem. What are you trying to solve? What kind of pain are you trying to alleviate out there with either a small group or, a community? And the way to do that is to go about an interview and talk to a lot of different people about the issue and ask them, I'll use an example, like maybe an issue could be, well, I'm not getting enough resources for education for our children here in the community. And then you ask, well, why not? And when you get that answer, then, well, why is that happening? And ask why about at least 3 times or 4 times until you really get to understand the problem. And so what I see on applications is so much just kind of a light overview of the problem, or maybe not a total understanding of the center of it. Why are you willing to spend enough time on this issue? So it's so important to do your groundwork before you even get to the application. And then once you have that understanding, it'll flow. Your ability to communicate that will be fine. But it's that interviewing. And I would say talk to at least 6 or 7 people, and just ask them, just tell them about it, the general category. What are the problems you see, and then listen. The key is listening. The object is not for you to talk, but for the person you're interviewing to talk. So, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That's so lovely. Carla, I'd invite you to add any hints and tips that you'd like to share.
Yes, I suggest to use for the proposal. I suggest using any visual communication tools that you can use to facilitate the visualization of your project and to present it in a clear and maybe in a pleasant way. Because as judges, we don't score the design, but that's gonna make it much easier for you to communicate to proposal and for us to understand the idea. And I also suggest that if your project is not accepted this year, well, improve it and try again. Persist, don't get discouraged.
Oh, Carla, that is so important. And the next year, you might have a slight different take on it. We call it iteration in the startup world. You're just going to tweak it, or whatever. There's a chat question in here. They're asking me what makes a good startup, the dynamics and characteristics, exactly what I just talked about. Understanding the problem, really knowing, why this person is having some pain about something or some frustration. It can be, quite critical, or it could be, just something on different levels. But what I look at is the passion of that founder of that startup, of that idea, and how much homework they've done on talking to people about it.
That's really valuable. Edward, would you like to add anything?
Yes. Sometimes you may find you've done a project and you know the project you're considering it to be something that you want to put in the application. It is always good if you can be able to have some level of feedback from your partners, your community, just to know what do they think about this project, what do they see, you know, because that part of that feedback, you know, you've gathered helps to strengthen your application and say it connects to a particular problem, it's actually resonating with people, it's, you know, hitting at the right heartbeat, so that then we're seeing in the new ambition, in the new plan that you're now submitting for consideration, be able to say that actually you've done maybe a pilot, you've done some trial.
Feel like we can be able to move forward into another level. And that will make a very big difference in terms of how you're able now to be able to succeed and move forward. And finally, also just to put a tip in terms of impact, how you measure your impact or demonstrate your impact is not about having 10 million people, you know, taking your idea, you know, or upscaling your project. No, impact is just the level of reasonable change, gradual change in the community. So we're not looking for big impact. We're not saying that you now become Coke or you become Google tomorrow. You know, we're just saying that, can we demonstrate something that you're seeing a difference, a positive impact and moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's hugely valuable, and we're starting to get questions in the chat box. But before we open the floor, just want to recap what we've just heard, and to build on what we've just heard, and to just kind of encapsulate that a successful application contains a project or idea with a clear theory of change, of how you use futures and foresight methods to create and build a better or alternative futures. A clear demonstration on how you will engage your community in your project, whether your community is local or global. The size really doesn't matter. If you are completely new to foresight, then we want to hear about what motivated you to start your project. And then finally, we want to know why being part of this NGFP network is important to you and to the development of your project. Right, so let's open the floor to Q&As. And I'm just having a look now. I see a question from Mushfika Monica. I see there are application questions, and I believe there is also a video we submit. Is there space for us to submit a presentation or other documents alongside these pieces? I think that probably is one for the NGFP practice to answer. Yes, there are spaces to add documentation. We have simplified it slightly because we found that the judges, the application was being overloaded by backup documents. But of course, there are opportunities for you to provide background evidence to your case study and summaries and your projects and ideas. So yeah, absolutely. To build on that, in terms of answering around the video, some hints and tips around the video is that you have a certain amount of time, and so we encourage you to be really clear about the message that you're trying to convey in your video. It's not important to have all the flashing images and stuff. It can be really simple. You're not being judged on how impressive your video is. What we really want is to hear your voice and hear your idea. So if you can hear that clearly, so and concisely, and be clear about what your problem is that you're solving or want to solve, what your project idea is, and how you hope to be on the journey to solving that, then that's wonderful. But really, it can be you, mobile phone, and your voice. That's lovely. If you want to throw in and animations and stuff, that's fantastic also. But really and truly, we just want to hear your voice, your ideas, and your passion. I don't know if Michelle, I think you may want to jump in there.
Sarah, I have one other thing about the video that the applicants are doing. the main thing to concentrate on is speaking slowly. I have listened to several videos that I just cannot understand because the students, they're so excited and they have so much, to talk about, but it's just going too fast. And so practicing being slow, pausing after a couple sentences, just for 2 or 3 seconds, it really helps because it's amazing what you just can't understand sometimes. Thank you.
I'm not sure if Katie has another question, but just digging from one from the bottom, Sebastian might have been asked before, but how many applications will get accepted? Again, I think this is probably practice answered. So the application process or the judging process is very much in 3 parts. So we have an internal sift, and the sifting is about the criteria. Do you meet the criteria for the fellowship? And it's as simple as that. Are you including foresight and futures methods in your application? Are you within the age range? Are you hitting global challenges? So it's very kind of just making sure you hit the criteria. Then round 1, that's if you pass the sift, you are a member of the NGFP network. So I guess the answer, the short answer is that the number of applications is probably infinite as long as you pass the criteria. So it's important to, when you are uploading your application, that you pay attention to the questions that are asked and answer them honestly and wholly, and that way you will get through the sift.
I'm just having a look in the chat now. So I've shared some information about the global challenges in the chat directly, because there's a bit of a blurb on our website for each of them, for each of the 7 global challenges, and also on the application page there's more information. But this is probably worth saying, this is a pilot this year that we're doing the global challenges. It's the first time we've ever done it before. So we are definitely very open to also seeing what comes back our way. People that, in your view, yes, I'm working in peace building, yes, my project is addressing climate specifically, great. Then there's options where you can tell us a little bit about that, and you can explain the specificities behind it. And as the judges have said, just explain what's already happening within your community and what progress might have already been made. So it will definitely be a bit of a case of building on what we have this year and looking at our definitions and our way of viewing something like emerging technologies, and then what comes back in as a result.
Yeah. Another question from Marion to the judges is it okay if the idea is operational and looking to make a larger impact? I'd like to invite one of the judges to respond.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is okay to have an ongoing project you can be able to share, and you actually in a particular phase, whether it's at a pilot stage, whether it's actually in your first year or whatever time frame, even if it's at a close, it is still acceptable, because then as long as it can demonstrate some level of futures thinking or futures application, or it can actually grow and feed and support an existing project, then by all means share with us. One thing we need to be clear is that the stories are not just necessarily for winning their word. They're also for sharing, for other people to learn, for other people to be able to scale them up, So yes, I know the incentive is to win, but also to appreciate that they actually help to demonstrate a very strong body of knowledge around the application of futures in different contexts and timelines. So by all means, we can do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one more thing about the operational question is what Eddie was saying about looking at a process that's already out there. Say something that's happening in some place in your community to help sustainability, whatever, and your idea and your innovation comes from widening that idea to another group, or taking that idea and adding one more layer to it. just keeping it simple, but just look at what's happening out there already. And you've got lots of ideas to on how to improve that.
Thank you. Bit of a really important question that I'd like to pose to the judges from Kulthar Monisola is, how do we determine a wholly and honest application? How do we decipher an authentic application? I'd like to open that to the judges.
Well, I
think I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead, Eddie. Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'd just like to say that in sifting through the application, remember each judge gets, let's say, around 10, 15 applications to go through. So there is always a clear guiding criteria that we use to be able to assess, how the project is developed, what are the projects, what are the outcomes of it, and now getting into the main project itself and moving now to see how the idea has been presented, what are the kind of challenges, the hindsights, and the intricacies. So we are able to see in terms of one against many, because one cannot be totally an outlier against the many. So we are able to see that because there's a clear criteria, but at the same time, we are clear that here in this kind of application is not about clout, it's not about ego, it's not about winning, it's about learning, it's about getting to know what other people are doing, it's about enhancing the growth and the application of foresight methods. And that is the holy grail, so to speak, or to use your word. That's the holy grail, and that is the authenticity we are looking for. And that's why we are saying we're not looking for perfect projects. We're not looking for projects which are going to solve all the world problems. No, we're just looking at projects which are making a difference at the local level, at small scale, and they can grow up. I think Michelle or Carla can add more. Thank you.
Yeah, so the authenticity comes through your own story, your personal story on how you got to this idea and how, what's the background getting you there. It's almost, I having taught innovation for several years and looking at ideas, I can just tell if it's really authentic and this person has really done all that. It's really easy to tell, although on video, without being in person, it's a little more difficult, but that story is so important.
Yeah, and just to add more around the detail is that we also ask for references on the application. So as well as Edward alluded to, around that you have multiple judges looking at the same application and then coming together as a panel to discuss openly the application, we do ask for references that we can reach out to also in terms of a logistical aspect. I know that people are asking about recordings. This session is being recorded and it will be circulated. If you can't think of a question now, but something pops up in your head later on along your application journey, you can email us and we'll pop the email address in the chat box as well, because we are here to support you throughout the whole of your journey up until close. And the sessions, all of the Q&A sessions are recorded. So our first one, which was around the fellows, that is recorded, and we will be circulating that too and making all recordings available on the NGFP website.
Sarah, do you want us to put our email into the chat, or will you have that available?
I have that available, and I would encourage everybody to email directly to the NextGen email address for any questions, and then we can make connections forward. While we have 5 minutes left, I just wonder if I can throw a curveball in here and ask you a question around what brings you, the judges, what brings you to us every year to support this? What makes you come and turn up and be our supporters in NGFP Live? Why do you judge NGFP, please?
Well, I'd like to share that for me it's really important to understand which are the concerns of the participants around the world. Because of my work, I know the concerns of my students about the future, but all my students are located in Latin America. And as a judge, I assess projects from other regions of the world. So it's an amazing chance to understand which are the challenges, which are the desires, which are the fears that are represented in every project. It's a great chance for me. Thank you.
So I take the applicants and some of the people who win this. I take that into my classroom on innovation to have my students understand around that things are happening around the world in little places they never even knew, that this problem existed. And I'm just really interested in bettering the world and trying to help where we can. But the examples that I bring from this experience into my classroom and people in my community is one of the reasons I do this.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just it allows me to learn more, to appreciate more, and also to help whenever I am engaging with journalists and media practitioners and researchers, the people are doing, so that they can be able to have a better approach in terms of how they report and how they actually create change in their individual spaces. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. That was just wonderful to hear. And just one extra thing is that when you do become part of the NGFP network, we have connections with our judges network, and we make connections and we meet with each other and support each other and share and collaborate. So this is just really the beginning of our journey. Thank you so much for Carla and Michelle and Edward for showing. Thank you all for showing up here. I'm just going to hand to Katie for close, but thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. And thanks, Sarah. Brilliant. Really good questions. We'll share everything afterwards via email. And there's just some key dates here. Applications close on the 2nd of June. So you've got just less than a month to get them finished. And we've got one more session. I've hyped it a few times already today, but the final live Q&A session is all about learning how to frame your use of foresight. So if you're on this call and you're thinking, I think I'm using foresight, I think I'm using Features method, but you're not quite sure how to communicate that, then please come to this session. It should be a really good one. It's 23rd of May, 1 o'clock BST. And thanks so much, everyone. Good luck with your applications. Have a good rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.